Alright, doing a response video to an older Stefan Molyneux video. Machine Ghost guy posted me the link. Apparently he watches all this crap for some dumb reason. Anyway, so it's a good video though to respond to just because it's pointed. It's a response video he did to Jon Stewart, just asking some rational questions about the value of civilization. Didn't use the word civilization, but isn't that what we're talking about? We're talking about the difference between living civilized and uncivilized. You know, and this whole, it's the non-aggression principle, non-initiation of force or violence, as if this is possible. And you can just come up with so many examples. Again, I just use the simplest one of I build myself, I acquire myself property by whatever standards these guys have. And I build myself a nice, comfortable life, like the modern mystic. I live in France, and I got myself a nice, beautiful garden, and I got a little greenhouse, and I got a very nice life. And some asshole next door decides he wants to raise pigs. And he pollutes my water, he fouls my air, and he annoys me with noise all day of pigs grunting and squealing, and, you know, even when they're getting slaughtered, screaming. And I'm supposed to say, what? Well, it's non-aggression. He's not being aggressive. He's just being obnoxious. He's being noxious to my life. I can't sit in my gazebo and enjoy the fresh air anymore. I can't. My life is ruined. I've invested years of work into my life. And I'm supposed to what? Move? You know, or am I going to go tell that fucker, no, we're not playing this. No, we're not doing this, you ruin my life, and laugh. That ain't happening. That, in my opinion, is an act of aggression. You've aggressed against my sensibilities. And so how does this, like I said, we can come up with a million examples of how this just doesn't work. This doesn't make any sense. What, let's all divide the United States into little squares, you know, per person size squares. So every person gets their little plot. And then we all line up on a starting line and then just fire a gun and say go, and whoever can run the fastest gets the best plot. You know, the disabled people, well, too bad. Yeah, you got the slum. You got the cesspool part. You got the toxic waste pile. I mean, this is just silly. You know, what if my neighbor doesn't want to just play with pigs? What if he wants to play with radioactive elements next door to me? You know, this doesn't go anywhere. This is just nonsense. You're somehow more free if we all have to build fences. You know, we have to tie strings to our kids so the pedophiles can't get them, because he's not going to do anything to prevent pedophilia. He's not going to fix human psychology. The bad people are still going to exist, and you're not going to be able to tell the bad ones from the good ones. So what do? What non-aggression principle do you apply to protect yourself from the bad guys, besides building moats and fences and then you'll start droning them. You'll start saying the best defense is a good offense. I mean, this doesn't work. It's just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Talk about fixing our civilization, not breaking it more. You people should be embarrassed. You should be ashamed of yourselves to talk like this. You're going to fix the problem by knocking us back into less than the Stone Age with AK-47s? How do you think that would work out? I mean, this is just such a infantile response to reality. It's shameful. You're shameful. I call shamefulness.
So, we have Jon Stewart's 19 questions to libertarians. I will attempt to answer them succinctly. Number one, is government the antithesis of liberty? No. That is like saying that a dragon is the antithesis of biology, or a ghost is the antithesis of a human being. Governments and
dragons don't exist, so it's not part of biology, so I don't even know how that analogy works. Unicorns don't exist, not part of biology, so that doesn't work. Oh, anyway.
Dragons and hippogriffs and unicorns and ghosts do not exist. They are really only people with guns and people running and hiding from them. And so the initial...
So government's just people running around with guns and people hiding from them. Yeah, it's not like civilization, like waterworks and sewage plants and roads and parks and stuff like that.
Initiation of force is the antithesis of morality and of liberty.
Right. Initiation of force is the antithesis of morality, and so again, where does force begin? Does force begin with any offense against somebody else's sensibilities? If we could agree that that's where force begins, we're going to know that that life would be impossible. That there's no way to have any diversity at all. You either make all the people exactly alike and wanting exactly the same things, having exactly the same senses, or you will have conflict, and that conflict will escalate. And that's a fact of life that you're not accurately accounting for. You're lying in saying you have a solution when you have no solution.
The government is simply one large example, but there are many others, rapists, thieves, murderers, assaulters, and so on.
So again, if we agree with each other to have some civilizing rules about conduct and investment, we are rapists. So you're a rapist if you acknowledge the fact that you live in a real world where the Russians are coming or the commies are coming. You decide to have a defense system, and you try to find a mechanism by which you can equitably distribute the cost of that to everyone. That you wouldn't create a defense by voluntarism, because you know that lots of people just take advantage then, and they make huge profits off of your huge sacrifice. So you die so they can live better, and you'll call that non-aggressive and non-initiation of violence, or not a crime against some kind of morality. That somehow is morally permissible to be a slacker and take advantage of somebody else's sacrifice. And that would be civilization to you. That would be morally acceptable behavior, to not sacrifice and just take advantage of the suckers who got the job done. No, that's not the definition of moral. Throwing your grandmother at the rapist is not morality.
So no, government is not the antithesis of liberty. The initiation of force is the antithesis of liberty.
The initiation of force is the antithesis of liberty. And well, what is liberty anyway? Again, what is liberty if it isn't the liberty to take? Right? You can't have without taking. So this, like again, and who are you going to take from? Who are you going to initiate your force against? If some slut has 10 kids, and her kids are leaking off of her property onto your property, what do? Do you blame the slut, or do you blame the kids?
2, one of the things that enhances freedoms are roads. Infrastructure enhances freedom. A social safety net enhances freedom. Absolutely, and allowing rape enhances the freedom of a rapist.
So he's saying he's equating disabled people with, and elderly people with rapists. That somehow the people who've made a contribution to society, if you have some sort of social system that says, okay, they didn't think they were going to live to be 115, but they did. That somehow you should just, when their money runs out, they should just eat asphalt or something. Eat cement. Fuck you. And no, if you say something we should do better than that, then you're placating and you're acquiescing to a rapist. No, I don't think so.
But freedom is not the goal. Morality is the goal.
Again, it's moral to punish people for who their mother is. It's moral to punish people because they made a reasonable estimate of what their longevity was and they were wrong. So they should be punished for not predicting the future accurately. People should be punished if they have a child born mutated or disabled or substantially broken. We should punish them for that.
Jetpacks give you freedom from gravity, so to speak. That doesn't mean that they're moral. So, yeah.
So now he's comparing morality to a jetpack. Is it okay for my neighbor to jetpack? Can he fly planes over my house? Is that non-aggressive, or is that aggressive? If he flies his plane over my house, over my property, if I live in a place where there's a chance of a huge forest fire, and he wants to play with fire, is that aggression? Can I stop him?
Yeah, for sure. Social safety net enhances freedom. But of course, these things also enhance the freedom to make bad choices. So, for instance, free roads from the government, and they were free for those who bought them because they were all financed through deficit spending.
Well, that's not true, so that's kind of silly, right? We have highway funds that are financed through gas taxes, so that's sort of a lie. Most roads are financed that way. Most road repair is financed that way. So you're just lying, because it's one of the few things that actually is paid for. But again, it's social infrastructure, and it would be socially stupid to do it voluntarily, even if we didn't have corporations do it, even if we voluntarily did it as a government. The very idea that we'd establish toll booths, for the people who didn't pay for it, that we'd have to somehow collect a fee from the people who weren't willing to put the money up front, so they have to pay a fee, and then make these distinctions. It would be terribly inefficient. It would break the whole idea of the functionality of having something done as a collective rather than something done as a bunch of individuals, and only the individuals who paid for it can ride on it, and all that complexity. So why add more cost? Again, you're not free if you're living in a society you have to be afraid of. And that's reality. So this guy's whole theory of life is that somehow he's going to cure the human problem. All the maniacs will be somehow disappear, and we won't have huge infrastructure costs as individuals to protect ourselves from lunatics, which is a lie. Obviously, there's a huge collectivist advantage in having some mechanism to keep your children safe. And not having that mechanism will mean your life will get incredibly expensive if you want your child to have any freedom, because your child will have no freedom if it's left vulnerable to the predators. And everybody can figure that out.
So the bill was simply paid forward to the future generation, or billed forward to the next generation. It allows you to make bad choices. Welfare allows you to make bad choices.
Right, and who's defending that? I don't think any of these people would defend people being irresponsible and being obnoxious to civilization by doing things that are just totally corrosive to it. The problem is how to fix it. Again, without punishing the child. So that gets pretty complicated, and you don't want to deal with those complicated questions. You just want to play God, so to speak, and because Eve sinned, will in perpetuity punish all of her progeny. You don't fix these problems with this glib, the government's doing it wrong. Well, what's your definition of doing it right? Labor camps for children? What? What exactly are you offering as the solution to sluttery? What's your solution to a slut? Let me hear it. And let me hear how you're going to take care of the problem. Give me your damn solution, fucker. I mean, to sit there and blame society because it hasn't fixed the problem of sluts. Well, how exactly are you going to fix the problem of sluts besides punishing her kids? Huh? Oh, that's right. Nothing.
It's like not completing your education, like not getting job skills, like having too many kids.
All right. Not completing your education, right? There's all kinds of reasons. I have reasons why I didn't complete my education. All right. Because, I was unfortunate, okay? Yeah, I got an anxiety disorder and was crippled by it. And my life was ruined by it. And, that's all there was, though. I saved the money. I had my bags packed. It just didn't happen for me, okay? I'm not saying I need sympathy for that, but it's just a fact, okay? Even though I wanted it, I was heading for it, I didn't get there. And not because I made any mistakes. So what's your counter-argument? I should be punished because of a disability? Oh. So that's your definition of morality and civilization. Well, it's my definition of crap. And what if everybody did get educated? Does that mean that garbage doesn't need to be picked up anymore? Does that mean that the diarrhea doesn't have to be cleaned up at the nursing home anymore? And are you going to, if we all have doctorate degrees, are you still going to pay the guy cleaning up the diarrhea at the doctor, okay, the engineering expert, who's going to, somebody has to do it, so he's going to be doing it. Are you going to pay him $7.50 an hour? And how are you going to choose which one of all of us, we all pass the IQ test. Well, how are you going to choose who has to clean up the shit? How are you going to choose who picks up the garbage? You don't have a solution to that question. You're not going to offer anything for the practical fact. You're just going to say, well, let's just make some slut babies. Okay, let the sluts solve the problem and have some ignorant babies so we can exploit the fuck out of them. That's your morality. Let's take advantage of overpopulation and extort the fuckers into no wages. Let's write contracts they can't even fucking read and call ourselves moral. Yeah, right.
When you can't financially pay for them. It's really, really bad for the children. So
yeah, like you care, again. And your solution is what? Your solution is what? Fuck 'em. That's your solution. Let's go back to Dickens' day, right? Where they sold pencils on the street corner. Yeah, we know your solution. Let them eat fucking goddamn rancid, rotten, curve cake. Horse cakes. Let them eat horse cakes. You fucking cunt.
Roads allow a society to make really bad decisions, like have urban sprawl and use massive amounts of energy.
Oh, yeah, like we wouldn't have these problems in anarchy. Yeah, anarchy couldn't produce anything like urban sprawl. Anarchy couldn't produce anything as stupid as, let's build a development on this wasteland, it's full of dioxin, but we won't test the water and we won't test the air. That's just a nuisance. We don't have to meet any standards anymore. All we have to do is be able to sucker somebody into signing a contract. We can know it's shit. We don't have to tell them. We can fool them. So then we all have to, that'd be another great thing too, right? We all have to pay to have some guy pick everything to pieces before we buy it. You'll come up to me with some piece of shit animal that's got like irradiated, he was used as a laboratory test animal, and you'll bring him to me and say, here's some food for you. Nice little lamb. Okay, yeah, it's full of dioxin, but yeah, it's a nice little lamb. And I'm supposed to what? I'm supposed to hire a bunch of scientists to test it to make sure it's not poison. Yeah, fuck you. You suck.
As opposed to looking for alternatives. So it doesn't matter what the results are.
That's the part I love. I love when they say that kind of shit. Doesn't matter what the results are. Yeah, amazing. No, it kind of does matter. So both the means and the ends are important to defining whether you did a good job. Yeah, both of them matter.
Slavery enhances the freedom to trade for slave owners, yet we would not say that is moral.
Well, you would. You would say that a wage slave is moral. So as long as there's excess population, you can take advantage of their excess. So you have some loaves of bread, you can just bargain the price. Just whoever the highest bidder is gets the bread. You'll use no other standard of value except who can pay the most, and call yourself moral and ethical. Yeah, I call you a fucking scumbag. And so I don't think there's any morality in that kind of attitude or approach.
3. What should we do with the losers that are picked by the free market? Well, there are two kinds of losers. I don't really like to use that phrase, but let's use it. There are two kinds of losers. There are people...
Yeah, the people born that way, not inheriting money, not inheriting land, not inheriting anything. Yeah, those losers, but you won't deal with those. You won't deal with that issue or subject at all. You'll call it moral to say that a child deserves a head start if it falls out of the right vagina. That makes sense to you morally and ethically. That's a fair game. A fair game is advantages. That's how you have a fair game. Is you play Monopoly, you just give that guy Boardwalk and Park Place to start the game. Right? And give that guy all 4 of the utilities to start the game. And then say go. No, sorry, no sale.
people who have problems in and of themselves, like some mental deficiency or some sort of physical handicap that significantly impedes their economic productivity, and this is a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah, so that's his argument. It's a very small percentage of the population. No, it's a huge percentage of the population has some sort of developmental disability, like 25%. And by the age 50, 50% of the people have a rather substantial degrade in their lifestyle due to some crippling disability of some kind, some diminishment in their functionality. Huge part of reality.
And Americans already give hundreds of billions of dollars to charity.
Yeah, okay, so he's going back to this voluntary charity thing. We saw how the world responded when we didn't have rules about this stuff. There was things called sweatshops, there was child labor, there was child exploitation, child prostitution, there was blind people selling pencils on the street corner, or apples. There was people living in absolute shit, not because they did something wrong, but because wrong happened to them. And your morality was, fuck them, unless you're a sympathetic asshole, well then you can go help some of them. Okay, but we're not going to require anybody to do anything, and we as a civilization are going to live off of them if we possibly can. If we can force them to knit us something or do some other thing, some hard labor, we'll do it. Because it's to our advantage. So we saw these ethics. We saw what we did. We imported the Chinese to build our railroad. Then when the Italians and the Irish showed up, we beat the shit out of them for every dollar we could suck out of them. And that was the charity they were offered.
This is the case with most of the Western world, so there's no reason to believe that won't continue. And
there's every reason to believe it'd revert back to what it was, which was horrible. And you just won't admit it was horrible, and it was horrible because people are selfish cunts. People like you are selfish cunts. And they won't do anything decent. Unless they can make a buck off of it.
So those people will be taken care of. They will have family. They will have friends. They will have...
This is all just, right? We all know this is not reality. This is not how reality works. This is not how it worked for hundreds of years in failed civilizations run by monarchs. So, fuck you. This is bullshit.
Charities and all these kinds of things to take care of them. But there are...
Like I said, don't you think that if that were true, the government wouldn't even bother fixing these problems? We wouldn't have to come up with solutions. If old people weren't eating cat food and dog food, we wouldn't have bothered. But the fact was, that's what the reality was. They'd get kicked out of their home and they'd be living on the street eating people's garbage. Shit, this is just such a lie.
Other people who are losers, who are not picked by the free market, but are losers as the result of their own choices, right?
Yeah, whatever. Their own choices. This is some messy language right there, right? Choices based on what? Being molested as a child. But this whole idea of this vision of what is good competition, and again, I'm going to argue is what have we found? What do we see in reality? We see that people love a good game. They love video games because guess what? You can lose preposterously and it just doesn't matter, right? It just hurts your ego and it doesn't kill you. And so that's what we like a safety net. We like the safety net of a virtual life game because there's no real harm. And that is a valuable thing, to take the real harm out of the game. And so why have competition that does real damage? Why not just have an honorable competition? If you can, if two gladiators go in, they want to play the game, well, they can play the game with it's like fencing. They don't play with real swords, and they wear a suit, and it records the jabs, and it acknowledges the kill. So they get the same thrill of the contest, except they don't leave somebody with a fucking bloody wound. And isn't that the ideal, is to create accomplishment and enhanced skill without creating damage, without making it catastrophic? And so this whole idea of destructive competition needs to be replaced with an idea of constructive competition. Win-win competition. Make your lesser better through the experience. Don't destroy him. All right? And that's what your unleashed capitalism is just about destroying. It isn't about being better. It isn't about improving everything for everybody. It's just about one monster and how big and how slobbery a Jabba the Hutt it can become. And we can do so much better than that with a little bit of brains. Fudge.
Right, so they have sex without protection, get pregnant, and bingo, bango, bongo.
You'll fuck the kid in the ass. Yeah, right, exactly. Fuck that kid. It's his fault. He picked the wrong mother.
They have a significant impediment to their future productivity.
Yeah, called the child that you'll fuck in the ass. You'll sit there and force it to work for you for shit. Because, why? Because you can. There, that's the morality. I can, so I will, so fuck you. Yeah, you're such a upstanding guy. Kick the little kid in the ass. Punch him in the face. Yeah, you're such a moral guy.
So people make mistakes. They make bad choices.
Right, and other people have to live with those choices, and that's the whole damn fucking point, and you ain't seeming to get that point, that there's no way you can do almost anything on this goddamn planet without fucking somebody else over.
People can choose to invest in only one stock, some speculative mining stock, and then they get wiped out. Well, that's the result of your own choices. I mean, freedom is risk, freedom is responsibility, and people who choose to take risks in order to make lots of money, and I have no problem with risk-taking. I mean, it was risky for me to quit my secure career as an IT executive and entrepreneur to do this crazy stunt for a, quote, living. And if that had blown up in my face and I'd ended up starving to death or having to go back to my old career, there's risks for me to take. So it's not losers that are picked by the free market is to externalize the reality.
Yeah, well, whatever. You just glibly stepped right over the reality, which is there's huge investments in things that are good, and those things can be killed by a Randolph Hearst or something. And they did no wrong, and they did nothing immoral, and so it's just a huge waste, and it creates huge deprivations. Okay, but just deny all that. To deny the fact that destitution and debt are very, the idea that I'm not a big fan of some sort of unlimited bankruptcy, but the idea of it, the idea that you get a chance to restart, you pay some price, but not an insurmountable price seems reasonable. To make it an insurmountable price seems unreasonable. But anyway, whatever.
People's choices. So, do we live in a society or don't we? Are we a collective? Everybody's success is predicated on the hard work of all of us. Nobody gets there on their own. Why should it be that the people who lose are hung out to dry? For a group that doesn't believe in evolution, it's awfully Darwinian. Well, it's really a shame when people who don't understand science use scientific metaphors. I think it's Ayn Rand who observed that.
Yeah, Ayn Rand. I mean, it's just hilarious.
People call capitalism a dog-eat-dog world, but dogs don't even eat each other in nature, let alone...
In nature, dogs don't exist, so that's kind of silly, right? Right, but we know that wolves exist. We know that animals do eat each other. They do kill each other. They fight with each other all the time for their lives and their territory. Even within their own tribe, there's a hierarchy that creates attrition. So let's pretend reality isn't reality. That violence isn't the fundamental, that aggression isn't a fundamental feature of how evolution works.
With the free market. The free market is predicated on win-win negotiations. This is a praxeological...
Win-win negotiation. So he's saying it's win-win negotiations when he drives somebody down to desperate wages. That's win-win. So there's 10,000 people that want a job, and he finds out who will work for the very least. And that's called win-win.
Foundational, fundamental truth. That if two people engage in voluntary trade, both of them anticipate or expect to be better off at the end of that trade. Right? There's simply no way to get around that. If I have
yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, there's simply no way to get around what? You won't get cheated? That the contract will be written with all kinds of finagly language. He'll misspell his last name and then claim it was, I didn't sign it. It's got the wrong name on the contract. Ha ha ha. It's not really me.
$5 and you have a pen. I give you $5 in return for the pen. You want my $5 more than you want the pen, and I want your pen more than I want my $5. So we're both better off. It is win-win. That is not the case.
Yeah, it's only win-win if the pen has ink in it, right? The pen you get. It's only win-win if the pen you got doesn't have dioxin in the ink. Then it's, but it's not win-win if the usual rules of cut a corner, make $1, cut some more corners, make some more dollars. If that rule isn't in place, you're not going to win-win anymore. You're going to get shystered. You're going to get schemed. Scheme is the name of the game.
With a lion chasing a gazelle. That is win, lose, and eat. And so...
Yeah, and that's a fundamental feature of the monopoly acquisition of ownership and control. So you have no mechanism to reboot the game. You give the birthright privilege of head starts to the wealthy, and then you call it a fair fight when it's exactly that. It's lions and gazelles. You give all the tools to one animal and none of the tools to the other animal, and then say, go. Again, just what the result is going to be 999 times out of 1,000, and you're going to pretend you're playing, you're umpiring a moral game.
Darwinian doesn't apply to the free market. Nope.
Oh, whatever. It's the entire mechanism is founded on, might makes right. Survival of the fittest by the environmental circumstantial definition of fitness. You're fit if you outmaneuver the other guy. If you scheme some way to get those pigs into your backyard, and you figure out that I'll buy the property on the west side of his, so the wind will blow right over him and suffocate the fucker. Let's not, again, just keep pretending that's your non-existent. Everybody play fairers are going to be the human race. I mean, it's really easy to make a government system that way too. If all the humans are voluntary, willing, moral, ethical, decent people, then I can have a government too that would be spectacular. It's really easy to have a great society if everybody's going to be a great person. Duh. But you're not dealing with anything real.
But if your business fails, you don't get eaten by predators.
Well, that seems a silly thing to say. Of course you do. You get destroyed. You get wiped out. Wiped out. Jump out of the window thing. Yeah, you get wiped out.
So, I mean, the idea that nobody gets there on their own, well, sure. But that doesn't mean that...
That doesn't mean I can't take advantage. Exactly, right. Nobody gets there on their own. Other people sacrifice or do something to make your life, your world better. You don't pay for it. You just take advantage of it and call yourself a decent, moral guy. Well, I call that indecent and immoral. I mean, if somebody's paying to take the pollution out of the water and you don't pay for it, and yet you drink the water, you're not a moral guy.
It's true that somebody who succeeds has some participation. They have lenders, they have investors, they have employees, they have the people who heat their building, they have the people who make their computers. But the difference is that we voluntarily trade to gain all of these benefits. The fact that Steve Jobs...
voluntarily trade. And again, without some regulation, without some rules, there's no way you could do that. There's no way you could volunteer. How could you possibly... have a rational loaning system in a world where no one's accountable, in a world where somebody can just skip town. I'll borrow the money and I'll break the contract. I'll skip town and you're fucked. You can't. As a practical matter, you can't do any of the things you think can happen. You can't build the Hoover Dam. You can't do a single thing that would make any difference in the world in your silly world, because there'd be no accountability.
is successful because I bought an iPad, it doesn't mean that I am somehow owed some part of Steve Jobs' fortune. No, because we voluntarily traded.
Well, it's not Steve Jobs' fortune. We know what his fortune's made on. Okay, it's made on the forced labor, the wage slaves in China. So again, don't pretend where the money came from. Steve Jobs didn't make the money. All right, the money is being made by the laborers. The value is made by the laborers. Steve Jobs didn't write the code.
His company gave me an iPad in return for the money. I wanted the iPad more than the money. They wanted my money more than the iPad. Voluntary exchange.
Voluntary exchange built on a whole complex organization of industry that you think would function better unregulated. And everybody's arguing that if it was unregulated, it would be probably burnt down. If there wasn't regulations, the competition would get grotesque. People would maneuver all kinds of chicanery, and it would cost an absolute fortune to produce anything because the competitors would be fucking each other over all the time.
So we trade for those things. We don't expect that because somebody is successful,
They would boycott and embargo. You know, some steel company gets really efficient, starts making steel at the lowest price, really great, high tech, the whole thing, and all of a sudden he gets embargoed on raw materials. A collective of his competitors get together and he gets embargoed and can't get raw materials anymore. I mean, you have nothing to fix that. None of your rules fix that.
Been sitting on our thumbs that we somehow owed some portion of their success. In a representative democracy, we are the government. We have work to do, we have a business to run, and we have children to raise. We elect you as our representatives to look after our interests within a democratic system. I mean, these are all just words. I mean,
I agree, they are just words. And our democracy is far short of being a representative democracy. So let's make it a better democracy. Let's make it more representative. Let's give more voices more voice. And so, yeah, there's lots of work to do to get the corruption out of it. So we can fix that. It's fixable. It's sitting there right. It's like a flat tire. What do? You have a flat tire. What do? You rip the tire off? You throw the whole wheel in the garbage? No, you pump air into the damn thing. You patch it. You fix it. We can fix this pig. But you assholes are running away. You assholes are saying, I don't want to have anything to do with fixing anything. I just want to break shit.
This is exactly what was said about the Soviet Union under Stalin, that it was representative of the will of the people and it represented the interests of the proletariat.
Right, and they were lied to just as we've been lied to that we've been given a democracy. Right, we have a 250-year-old system. It's like a 250-year-old bathroom. Why are we still using a 250? We wouldn't use a 250-year-old bathroom, would we? No, we'd expect a little better than that. Well, it's time to upgrade the democracy, okay? Get with the modern era, use the technology available to make it more representative and make it more functional in terms of controlling corruption and chicanery and violation of contract.
Steroid and so on, right? But it's not how the government works. It's not what the government is.
Like I said, well, the government is one thing. Now, the government's the military-industrial complex. The government's lots of different things, and some of those things are perfectly functional, and some of those things absolutely suck. And the sensible thing to do is to fix the suck, to always find improvements, and it's just silly to sit there and run away from the responsibility. I mean, even the Chinese have sort of figured some of this out in the sense that they found they have a huge amount of corruption, and they're starting to put some of these assholes in jail.
And the financial services industry over the past few decades have contributed over $2 billion in campaign contributions. So they have bought and sold to politicians who should be running around with...
Well, again, what exactly have the financial institutions done, of what have they gotten for that money? Is this, deregulation? They're not trying to buy, anything but deregulation with that money. So it sort of makes the exact argument. Were they trying to corrupt? Are they trying to make the system more government? Are they trying to buy more government with that money? Or are they trying to buy less government with that money? Are they trying to get more towards your philosophy with that $2 trillion? Or more towards my philosophy with that $2 trillion? Well, quite obviously, they're going your way, not my way, with that money. And what does that say? Yeah, so hoist on your own petard with that argument.
Logos of the companies stitched all over them like NASCAR drivers because they're owned. So the only people we get to vote for.
Yeah, they're owned to destroy regulation, not create regulation. So again, the entire function of that bribery and that corruption is to destroy government, not make government.
People who've been bought and sold by special interests beforehand. Financial services industry has donated more to governmental political runs for office than the healthcare industry, than the defense industry.
Right, and again, what are all these people trying to do? Are they trying to make more government, or are they trying to destroy government? And the obvious answer is they're trying to deregulate, to allow themselves to operate more freely and to take further advantage.
And a bunch of other industries all put together. So, I mean, this is like Jailhouse Rock elevated to a description of reality.
That didn't really make much sense, but whatever. I don't see Elvis anywhere. It's not in the building. It's kind of dead.
We're not the government. We're not the government. We say to the government, we want you to regulate this financial industry. Well, all that means is that the financial industry buys the people who regulate. They write the laws because, we always think that regulators are like parents and the corporations are like children. But quite the opposite is true. Because if you're really, really smart in the financial industries, you don't go to become a regulator. You go make $1 billion on Wall Street.
Well, the point is, you don't have to be very smart to be an umpire, right? Umpires don't have to be players. Umpires don't have to be able to hit home runs. Umpires don't have to do any of that shit to understand that their job is to find a fair pole and say, is the ball on one side or the other side of it? What did I see? Did I see the guy step on the base, or did I not see the guy step on the base? Umpires have to have good eyes, and they have to have a lot of other kinds of skills than the people they're umpiring. So again, your analogy means nothing. You don't have to be a criminal to be a guard in a jail. I could go 4 million examples of how you don't have to be something to regulate something.
It's the dumb people who go into the regulators. It's the bottom of the class. It's the lower IQ. It's the less skilled, the less competent. They're the ones who become the regulators. They're outsmarted, outmaneuvered, outbought, outbribed.
Well, that isn't even true anyway. I mean, obviously the regulators in Congress and in like the Federal Reserve, for example, some of these guys are pretty rich. But obviously that, to me, would be an indication of some corruption. So personally, I wouldn't be voting for these people to be put in these places. But, hierarchy is hierarchy. I could argue that the Harvard professors aren't brilliant. Obama was one, right? I could argue that there's a lot of nonsense in the hierarchy. How would your world create a different hierarchy? Your hierarchy would be, if you're born to wealth, you deserve status. Your world would give all the influence to whoever had the most dollars. And having the dollars would just mean who did you come out of? Who gave birth to you? It would be some kind of pedigree of horse racing or something. And even in horse racing, they don't give head starts.
By everybody in the financial services industry. That is the reality of what happens. And going back to grade school imaginary propagandistic nonsense to describe this predatory system is childish and ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, you've described it childishly and ridiculously. So yeah, you've accomplished your grade schooler task.
6, is government inherently evil? Should we take a dragon to trial for eating virgins? Well, no, this is a fairy tale. Government is a fairy tale. The initiation of force is immoral.
Right. And what is the initiation of force? If I build myself a life and some guy ruins it upwind of me, if he pollutes my water, is that force? Am I now allowed to apply force? When can my moat have a free lunch sign outside of it to try to seduce them in?
And those people who initiate force is immoral. Fraud, I think, would be punished in a free society. So those people who lie and misrepresent will.
So that's interesting, right? So fraud would be punished in a free society. Let's see what he says. Because how exactly would it be punished?
Face negative consequences, whether they're financial or some other matter. So
there'd be financial consequences some way. Somehow there'd just be this automatic consequence imposed by this non-corrupt force. Yeah, God will do it. I mean, right there. He didn't even say DRO, because he knows that's going to sound like government. So he didn't have anything. He just says that magically the invisible hand is going to stop the cheaters. Yeah, right.
Again, to say government is inherently evil is to create a red herring, right? It's like saying,
Well, it's a red herring to say that government is inherently always and nothing other than violent or aggressive. It's defensive. Much of what government does is for the defense of vulnerables, is for the defense of ethics and morality, is to try to create some sort of fairness. These are many of the mechanisms of government are exactly for those purposes. And because the corruption exists, and so some of this stuff ends up being feeding the military-industrial complex. We know this word, military-industrial complex, because we've known about it for a long time, and we don't seem to be able to do much about it. But the fact is nobody who likes government says that's a good thing. Nobody who's for civilization says, yeah, that's the way we ought to finance the military, is through a bunch of private corporations soaking us royally and creating wars for us to fight so we can use their hardware so they can make more money off the blood. What civilizationalist are you going to point to? What person for society are you going to point to? Do you think Jon Stewart is for the military-industrial complex? Come on.
Are black rapists wrong? Well, it's just one category of rapists, and government is just one category of the initiation of force. So forget about the government. It doesn't matter. I mean, people say to me, well, you're an...
Well, it's a simple question. You either say that it's fundamentally wrong or not, and to reduce government to just being a rapist is just bullshit, because quite obviously, government does a lot more than that. But you want to call feeding elderly people rape. Yeah, and that's just fucking idiotic.
You're an atheist. None of this is true. I mean, the reality is that I'm a philosopher, which means I pursue truth, and I'm sorry if imaginary things get knocked over by my...
Yeah, you're a Randian, Nietzschean, nihilist, motherfucking selfishist cunt. A selfishist. You think selfishness is the way to go. If you can fuck the other guy, fuck him. You want to raise pigs? Yeah, fuck him. Well, fuck you. Yeah, that's it. I mean, damn.
Mad drive towards the pinnacle of truth, but they're not there to begin with. So, yeah.
And again, your pinnacle of truth is, I'm going to pretend human beings aren't humans. I'm going to pretend they're not animals. I'm going to pretend they're not selfish. I'm going to pretend they don't need some sort of rules to play a good game by, that we can somehow automatically play a good game. We don't need rules. We'll automatically gravitate to a fair game. That's what humans do. They automatically gravitate to fairness. And you call that philosophy. That imbecilic notion, I'm supposed to say, has some coherency to reality.
Government is not inherently evil. That is prejudicial.
Yeah, but humans are pretty much inherently selfish, and that's a fact. And they will cut and weasel and connive and scheme. That's what they do. That's what brains are in. Brain actually exists for that purpose.
You've got to be more specific, more precise. I mean, if I say black rapists are evil, I've only confused the issue. No, rape is evil. Doesn't matter. The initiation of force is evil. I don't care if government does it or anybody else does it.
Yeah, it's just evil to have any kind of rules to a game. So any idea of an umpire or rules to make a game fair, if you want to have a boxing match, you should just be whoever can kill the other guy first. We shouldn't be bothered with this rules about